we are going to read from another section of Roar the Ganges. This is a book that Sky Guardian, one of our viewers, has sent us from his guru, Swami Tadatmananda, who has written this wonderful book from his own eyes as he ventures throughout India. We are now days away from his initiation into Hindu monkhood. He will be taking sannyas, renouncing the world, very shortly. When the Hindu priests arrived at 10 o'clock, Swami Sudananda summoned Achyut, another brahmachari student who is going to be initiated into sannyas as well, and me from our rooms. The head priest was a gaunt old man with sunken cheeks covered with grey stubble. He squinted through thick glasses and smiled in a friendly, grandfatherly way. He was accompanied by two younger assistant priests, one of whom was his son. Both were carrying cumbersome boxes crammed with the necessary articles: oil lamps, incense, camphor, various grains, leaves, powders, and even cakes of dried cow dung. Swami Sudananda led the two assistants upstairs to prepare the room where most of the preliminary rituals would be performed. The old priest instructed Achyut and me to follow him. We walked down the steps in front of the temple onto the ghat, a long concrete walkway jutting out into the river. Reaching the ghat's end, the priest explained in Hindi that we must bathe in the river before performing the other rituals. As we disrobed, he commanded us to throw our clothes in the river. We would not need them no longer. Achyut and I watched our deities float downstream. With this first symbolic act, the metamorphosis had begun. We had turned our backs on our old lives, and we were en route to the new. The water of the Ganges is cold year-round. It flows perennially down from glaciers and snowfields in the Himalayas. But in winter and spring, it is unmercifully frigid. The icy water stung our feet as we gingerly stepped in. Summoning our courage, we waded out to waist-deep water, treading carefully over the rocky riverbed. To properly perform a ritual bath, one must completely submerge at least 3 times. We swiftly took our 3 dips and started back, sputtering and shivering. Fortunately, the sun shone brightly and the air was mild. I hoped the weather would be as kind to us early tomorrow, when we would take our last dip. And hello, Shreen. Happy to see you again. And hello, Warrior Priestess. And hi, Sarah. We climbed back onto the ghat, and the priest handed us coarse white robes to wear. Saffron robes would be given by my guru, Swami Dayananda, at the time of final initiation. In addition to the dhoti and upper cloth, we each received a kaupina, underwear customarily worn by sadhus, consisting of 2 long strips of cloth. I had absolutely no idea how these were to be worn. Achyut sensed my perplexity and explained how to tie them properly to cover one's private parts. We modestly stepped aside to change. I fumbled with the kaupina until it was wrapped securely enough to keep it from falling off. Newly attired, we sat at the ghat's edge, facing the river and mountains, The priest held a small vessel of water drawn from the river and poured a spoonful into each of our hands. We sipped the water 3 times, reciting the Achamana mantras as the priest instructed. Om Keshavaya Namaha, Om Achyutaya Namaha, Om Anantaya Namaha. After this ritual act of purification, the priest directed us to pour water from our cupped hands into the river while reciting the mantras for Tarpana, a ritual offering of water to the gods, to the rishis, the ancient seers, and to one's ancestors. We repeated the mantras following the priest's sing-song intonation, dipping our hands into the river repeatedly and pouring forth water slowly and prayerfully. Finishing these offerings, we followed the priest to the room where the remaining rituals would be concluded or conducted. This room was part of a new wing presently under construction. Its unplastered brick walls contained rough openings where doors and windows would later be installed. In the middle of the unfinished cement floor, a brick fire pit had been built by the priest's assistants. Next to it stood an altar covered with a white cloth on which they had drawn auspicious designs using red, yellow, and green-colored rice powder. The floor was littered with ritual paraphernalia. Achyut and I were each given a belt woven of kunja grass to wear around our waists and a wooden stick, danda. These are symbols associated with religious students. Both would be discarded at the time of final initiation. We sat before the altar with the old priest and performed a series of rituals in which various deities were worshipped to invoke Ishvara's, God's grace. For the next 3 hours, we offered flowers, rice, fruit, and incense as we performed elaborate pujas, worships. Dozens of Sanskrit hymns were chanted, some by the head priest alone, some accompanied by his assistants, and some by Achyut and me. We beseeched Lord Ganesha, the remover of obstacles, to clear the way for our initiation. We invoked the 9 planetary deities, Navagraha, which represent the laws of the universe. To them we prayed that our karmas might be conducive for spiritual growth. We sought the material blessings of Goddess Devi for sustenance and support in our new lives as sannyasis. It was early afternoon by the time we completed these rituals. The priests left to have lunch and get some rest. Fruits and milk were brought to the room for Achyut and me. We were required to abstain from meals until after our final initiation tomorrow. When the priests returned early in the evening, we were guided through the performance of a complex and richly symbolic ritual known as Ashta Shraddha. Shraddha is a funeral ceremony performed yearly for the sake of one's departed ancestors. Ashta Shraddha is an 8-fold Shraddha venerating different groups, gods, sages, generations of ancestors, and so on. The 8th and last offering of ritual is for oneself. Metaphorically, Achyut and I had to perform our own funeral ceremonies in anticipation of our symbolic deaths during the final initiation. Renunciation in Sannyasa is a total, all-encompassing, and includes every aspect of one's former identity as a person. The sun was setting when we began the last ritual of the day, Gayatri Homa. Homa is a ritual in which ghee, clarified butter, and other oblations are offered into the sacrificial fire, the sacred fire. The flames symbolically convey the offerings to the heavens. The cakes of dried cow dung, I discovered, were to be used for fuel. Following the priest's directions, we used large wooden ladles to offer ghee into the fire. With our hands we tossed in other offerings of seeds and grains. The flames hungrily consumed our oblations. With each offering, we recited the Gayatri Mantra. The Gayatri Mantra is supposed to be chanted daily by every Hindu initiated with the sacred thread, a religious emblem worn over the left shoulder by many Hindu men. Achyut had received his sacred thread while still a boy, as is customary. I had received it in a special ceremony at the Pennsylvania ashram only a few months ago in preparation for Sannyasa. As part of the final rite of renunciation, one sacred thread is given up. In order to be able to give it up, I first had to be invested with it. Hello, Gaia. At the time of Sannyasa, one gives up not only the sacral thread, but also the rituals associated with prior stages of life, including recitation of the Gayatri Mantra. After tonight, Achyut and I would never again chant the Gayatri as a daily practice. For this reason, we were supposed to recite it as many times as possible to receive its blessings. After the Homa was complete, we were instructed to remain awake all night, reciting the Gayatri Mantra and offering grains into the sacred fire. The old priest and his assistants left for the evening. They would return tomorrow before sunrise. The crowded room, which had bustled with activity all day long, suddenly became quiet. The sky outside had grown dark. Stars shone brilliantly in the cold, clear air. Inside, the fire cast its warm glow into every corner. I silently reflected on what had transpired so far. Peace and gratitude filled my heart. We kept vigil throughout the night, offering grains into the fire and chanting the Gayatri. Neela, the librarian, brought us a thermos full of steaming tea, earning our deep appreciation. The tea helped us stay warm and wakeful, but by the early morning hours, our vigil became an arduous struggle. We took turns walking around the fire to fight off cold and drowsiness. When the fire burnt low, we threw in a few sticks or pieces of dung cake. The night grew long as we patiently awaited the return of the sun's warmth and brilliance. It is the shining sun that is worshipped as a manifestation of God in the revered Gayatri Mantra that we chanted. Om Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. I meditate on God's sacred light as the gleaming sun. May it inspire our minds. This mantra absorbed my attention throughout the night, inspiring me to sense the all-pervasive presence of divinity manifest in all forms of light. In the bright tongues of fire, in the sparkling pinpoints of light dotting the night sky, and in the pale purple-blue glow beginning to appear on the eastern horizon. And with that, we will end our reading and the chapter there for now. Mark is well underway, being initiated into Hindu monkhood. Tomorrow will be the big day for him. For us, we will read it later on in this life. So thank you for listening with us, everyone. What a rare and sacred opportunity in this reading to become acquainted with such an auspicious ritual performed for thousands of years. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Sky Guardian, you ask, am I trying to recite the Gayatri Mantra as much as I can before initiation? I've had a feeling to chant it today. Actually, before I read what we read today, I wanted to go outside and chant the Gayatri on some mala beads, but I didn't have time since the Gayatri is a longer mantra. I agree, Sky Guardian. Swamiji is surrounded by synchronicity. I must acknowledge that.